Isaac, by the way, you've done pre and post for the Chargers the last 2 to 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your general sense of Brandon Staley and the job that he's done in these last 2 years?
I think generally he has done an excellent job shepherding them through the litany of injuries they had this season. The problem is when he has had mistakes, they have been in the most high-profile, blow-up-in-your-face situations. Obviously, last year in Las Vegas in the regular season finale. This season, he really got away with a bad fourth-down decision that should have cost them the Cleveland game, and he lucked out because the Cleveland kicker missed the field goal. The Mike Williams thing blew up in his face, but as I detailed on our shows, what was an even bigger mistake that he got away with was playing Justin Herbert and, to a lesser extent, Corey Linsley and Austin Eckler in those games. He could have had backups playing those positions more readily than Mike Williams, who is one of only 4 active receivers. So the bottom line is I think the decision today to move on from Joe Lombardi was the appropriate decision, and more importantly, the players in that locker room, especially Derwin James and Joey Bosa and Justin Herbert, they all absolutely have his back.
Well, I mean, that's all that matters to me. If those guys have his back, that's honestly all. I don't care about anything else. But it's interesting, the Herbert thing I agree with. You have Chase Daniel, and now part of it is Herbie, I'm sure, wants to play. The Eckler thing, they do have other backs. My question is, was he playing for a bonus? Some of these guys, they want another carry, they want another tutty so they can get a bonus. And they relay that to their coaches. It's one of the reasons that they have their coaches back, because the coach will, they'll take the bullets when the truth is that they're just taking care of them financially. That's an element of it. I know Mike Williams just got paid last offseason, so I don't think he's part of that. It's more they don't have enough healthy wide receivers.
That's precisely it, because I think a lot of people forgot the circumstances in comparing their situation to the Giants' situation. They still thought that Broncos game would be a meaningful game at the time that their inactives were due 90 minutes before kickoff, because the Bengals were still playing the Ravens. That game did not go final until 1 minute before kickoff, so they had to have their inactives thinking that it would be a meaningful game, and that's why Mike Williams was active. They only had 4 receivers active. And meanwhile, for example, it becomes a meaningless game. You can play Herbert instead of Chase Daniel. You can play Will Clapp instead of Corey Linsley at center. You can have Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree instead of Austin Eckler. But there's a little less wiggle room when you have only 4 active receivers and you're using, 3 and 4 receiver sets all game long.
Right. And like people say, well, you have 53. No, you only have 48 at the game, and then you have kicker, punter, long snapper, so you have 45.
Exactly.
It then becomes about math, So I agree, and I would also tell you that when people, here's my thing, okay? We're very quick to fire people. We're just very quick to fire people, and he has been there 2 years. And I would say there were a couple of games where you're like, look, the biggest issue with that team is their third quarter offense was in the conversation of worst in the league, regardless of whether or not they had their players or didn't have their players. Third quarter offense was just not good. You can't come out of halftime, whatever adjustments everybody else has made, yours didn't work.
I can't even believe this, but they literally scored 1 third quarter touchdown in their last 13 games, including the playoff game.
And I mean, just whatever's in the orange slices in the offensive meeting room at halftime, change it. Change it. And so I agree. And this is kind of how it works, right? It's like you're not going to change the star players, so you start to go, do you change the coaches? And before you change the coach, you say, hey, you got to change the coordinators. You change the coordinators, the next one to go is the coach, the next one to go is either the GM or the quarterback, and then you kind of start over. They're nowhere near there with the GM and definitely not anywhere near there with the quarterback. He's going to get an extension probably this offseason, and they'll continue to ride Justin Herbert. So, I mean, I guess my answer is I get it. I agree with it because I don't think they're that far off. I didn't like that they rushed to the line of scrimmage in Kansas City, but they also had a really good player kind of quit on a ball. That cost them the game. They beat Kansas City. It's a completely different season.
And then their second game against Kansas City came down to the final seconds and the brilliance of Mahomes and Kelsey when they had a really good defensive game plan for that game. By the way, you might have hit on something here with the replacing orange slices. They substitute your aforementioned PB&J with chia seeds. That could take them over the top.
I agree. What about you there, Jay Stu? You are, like me, a long-suffering Charger fan. You wanted blood all weekend.
Yes.
I mean, even Ramos is a Rams fan, wanted blood because he just wants. What do you think about them keeping Staley? And this is not Charger talk. It's all related with the rest of the league.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed.
You wanted blood, huh?
Yeah, and I hear everything Isaac said about the Mike Williams thing and the substitutions and the active players and what have you. I think that the Mike Williams thing is just one of many reasons that I felt our head coach, and by our, I mean the Chargers head coach, was overwhelmed this season. The problem with having an overwhelmed coach, and as to put words into your mouth, everyone makes mistakes. Well, he's in his second year and he's making mistakes. Do you really want a guy learning how to be the head coach when you have a generational talent still in his rookie deal? I think that's where there is to me the clock is ticking here, and Herbert's only going to be under our control with this contract for another one season. I just wanted somebody in here who could be an adult in the room and maybe inspire Herbert and put him in positions to succeed. I don't know if the offensive coordinator position is going to be able to do that, but maybe it'll be like a Brian Daboll type of situation where he comes in and he just makes Herbert God's gift to quarterbacking. I just wish Brandon Staley was without a job today.
Okay. I mean, look, why don't you wait to see who they hire as offensive coordinator and see how it looks? Because again, this is the reality of the NFL. Right? Last year when Brandon Staley took over, the previous regime ran a completely different defensive scheme. So on the fly, how Brandon Staley likes to play is he likes 7 guys in the box. Right? That's his belief. But in order to have 7 guys in the box, you got to have some big, thick guys in the middle, right? You got to be able to. And they were terrible against the run in year 1 because his style is 7 guys in the box. In year 2, they slowly, as they got healthy, became very good against the run. They did. And it allows them to fly around and run some exotics and occasionally send somebody at the quarterback. The idea is when you change coaches, when you change regimes, you change everything. Right? You change defensive schemes, you change offensive schemes, and everything that you've built, you have to kind of rework on the fly. And I think even the most ardent critic would say they're not that far off. They're really close. And I agree, like the chargering and that's something they're going to have to overcome. And it's a big one. But everybody's answer to everything is Sean Payton, Sean Payton, Sean Payton. Are you going to give up a first-round pick? Are you going to give a guy $20 million? And then even if you do, hey, is he going to want to bring in his new GM? How did he and Telesco work together? I think there's a lot of questions there.
Yeah, that to me is a their problem, not a my problem. As a fan, I don't care that Tom Telesco would feel more at pressure at his job or anything. I care that we would put the best product out there next year while we have all that money to keep spending on people other than the quarterback. So yeah, that to me is their problem. I don't really care that Telesco would feel less or more pressure on this.
So what's missing to you is the offense, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you think the offense is going to be better if they have the all-pro left tackle there?
Yep, that'll help. Okay. That'll help.
And maybe the wide receivers are healthier and the tight end is healthy. Like you think all that stuff. I mean, I don't know. Like we're all blaming and when they did, and I get it. Like the Mike Williams thing backfired. But it's I would even tell you when Bill Belichick won the Super Bowl against the Seahawks, right? Bill Belichick won the Super Bowl against the Seahawks. If you remember watching that game, everybody wants to point out that the Seahawks, all you had to do is hand to Marshawn Lynch, right? So Pete Carroll, who we all think can coach, he allowed, and it wasn't him, it was Darrell Bevell, to make that decision to throw the football with a tiny quarterback who couldn't see, and because he couldn't see, couldn't get the ball at a downward trajectory to throw. That ball's got to be low. Instead, it was high. It gets deflected, and it gets up, or didn't get deflected. Malcolm, what's his name? Is it Malcolm Jenkins? No, Malcolm
Butler.
Butler, jumps the route. But if it's down in the dirt, it's really hard to make that play. Regardless of which, if you remember that game, Belichick didn't let him score, and wasn't using and I don't think he had any timeouts, or maybe he had one timeout. Didn't use his timeouts. Like they had zero chance of winning that game if not for some miraculous defensive play. It was actually a mistake. When Duke beat Butler in the national championship game, and everybody talks about Gordon Hayward's half-court shot, Mike Krzyzewski had Brian Zubek miss a free throw. Okay? Miss a free throw. Up 2. But why would you do that? If he makes the free throw, even if a half-court shot goes in or a three-point shot goes in, you go to overtime. And it was a cognitive decision. Missed the free throw because, well, they don't have a set play for a missed free throw rebound, and you run off time getting the rebound. And if you listen to Mike Krzyzewski's interviews after the national championship game, they asked him about it. He's like, if you do it again, I guess it worked out. It was a mistake. You never do that. You never put losing on the table when you could have gone up 3. The point of it is, yes, Staley has made mistakes. They all have. They all have. And Isaac can say, and he's right because he's seen every game, every snap of every game, there's been some big ones and some big situations. No question. There have been some good calls they made as well. There have been some proper decisions they made as well. So I'm just not as prone to, throw the baby out with the bathwater right away. And I love Sean Payton. Anybody who's listening to the show knows that Sean, when he was coaching New Orleans, and I expect nothing less when we're in Phoenix, he comes by, he gives us a half hour at the Super Bowl, and then he usually gives me a half hour where we duck away in the back and we just talk football, and he tells me everything about the league and everything he thinks. He's a brilliant dude. But you don't know how much it's going to cost. You don't know about the draft compensation. And, oh, yeah, by the way, one of Sean Payton's big fears is he doesn't want the owners involved in personnel decisions. And, look, you can think whatever you want about the Spanoses. They've been paying a lot of money. They built a new facility. They ponied up for Joey Bosa, for Mike Williams, for Derwin James. They'll soon do so for Justin Herbert as well. Owners own. And when that comes back around to an owner that, hey, this prospective head coach for a job that's not even open doesn't want you involved in any of the football decision-making stuff, even if Spanos isn't really involved, but those guys like the younger Spanoses like to be in the room, they're allowed to say, I don't want that. I like my current setup. So, Jason, will it cause you to not watch Charger games?
Of course not. I mean, I'm probably going to watch it and root against Brandon Staley succeeding.
No, you're
because
not.
I want my opinion to be validated. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Okay. I'm a Charger fan. I'll root for the Chargers. I'm just disappointed in them for this decision.
Okay.